Yo, what is up guys? It is esports content entertainment. So before you guys actually watch the rest of this video, I wanted to actually, make this little short video right now and explain to you guys the context surrounding the first video that you are going to be seeing, and then the second video you will also get attached to that. So initially I did a response video to a Travis Gafford video where the video was titled Riot Games' poor communication surrounding the LCS, because as you guys already know, Riot Games is very bad with communication surrounding the league community, especially when it comes to the LCS, the LEC, the LPL, and the LCK. And they recently made a decision where they were actually going to be moving the broadcast days, instead of to be weekends, to weekdays, Thursdays and Fridays. Now, they are still keeping Thursday and Friday, which I personally don't mind, because that also allows me to go to the LCS a bit more consistently than I was used to back in the day. As you guys already know, all those trips I made to the LCS, I had to take a day off of work, and it was very hard to get those days off of work to even go to the LCS. So having LCS days, Thursdays and Fridays is perfectly fine by me. Now, the timing of it is what really got people angry and very concerned about their investment into the league, because the timing would have started for like 12 p.m. PST, like 3 p.m. EST. So you guys know, Chaz and like Warren, who are like in New York, Connecticut area, they're 3 hours ahead of me. So right now, as I'm recording this little mini video that will be attached to the other videos, it's 11:25 a.m. right now. That means for them, it's like literally already 2 o'clock, actually, So now you factor in at 12 o'clock, even I'm at work, I can't even watch, And then they tried this experiment out during the LCS 2023 kickoff season event, where the event started at 11 o'clock a.m. p.m. PST, where I watched it. And the viewership on YouTube peaked at like 5,000. On Twitch, it was still very good. It peaked at like 40K. But remember, guys, the LCS is trying to sell sponsorships too. And they broadcast on, Twitch and YouTube. And you cannot sell sponsorships of 5,000 viewers. It's just not going to happen. Like, I knew initially from their schedule change, they tried to essentially like sack the viewership on YouTube, but you can't do that. You legitimately cannot do that if you're trying to actually sell sponsorships. So now fast forward, you have today, they put out this tweet on their official LCS, Twitter account, that being, LCS fans, we hear you and appreciate the feedback. The LCS broadcast schedule will shift to start at 2 p.m. PST to 5 p.m. EST on Thursdays and Fridays. That's actually way better. Now even I can catch pretty much all the games on Thursday, because on Thursday I would have not been able to really catch like the first 2 games, but I would have been able to catch the last 3 of them. Fridays, it's gonna be a bit easier for me to also consume games too. I'll miss like the first game or 2, but I'll be able to watch the rest of them. That's actually good. That's actually a really good thing. And Riot Games did listen about the double elimination problem, about their international tournaments. I made this prediction a long time ago on the Cloud9 podcast as well. That being the fact that MSI not only should be double elimination, they should also add more teams. And they did. Like, anyone who's been watching the Cloud9 podcast know I've been talking about that for years, actually. Even before I started doing the podcast, I said, why can't MSI just have more teams? Like, at least just top 2. I wasn't asking for like 3 teams. I was just asking for an extra team and double elimination. Now, I still personally think World should have double elimination. And if you haven't watched enough World Championships, you would know why double elimination is so crucial to a tournament like that. Because there's so many times really bad not good teams kind of get a little far to the point where they're gonna lose. We know they're not good. That team is trash, and they get knocked out anyway. And then most people go, yeah, that team fucking sucks. Well, the reason why they got that far is because the bracket system and the format supports that. And I know Riot likes their upsets and shit, but in reality, you can still have upsets and very big, high-filled tension stake moments in double elimination. If their biggest thing is, I want to have upsets, you can have upsets in a double elimination format. What if you randomly had, I don't know, fucking Rogue they were never gonna beat JDG, but you know, like Rogue were facing JDG. What if Rogue faced JDG and they knocked him out and they put him in the losers bracket? You know how big of stakes that is? Rogue would automatically move on to face the winner of Gen G. Yeah, they would have faced the winner between T1 and RNG, which would have been T1, and they would have got their ass kicked by T1. But you guys see my point there? There is stakes in double elimination. You know, you have to look at the bracket as a whole. And I know someone mentioned the best team of the world event actually won, and that's mostly that. That's not ever really the case though. You know, I've watched World Championships since 2014, and for the most part, that is pretty much technically true, but there is various cases in World Championships where certain teams, like, yeah, they overperform, but are they really that good, or is it just on that day? Like, it doesn't really matter to me about just being good on that day, and particularly when it comes to esports, it's a bit different compared to traditional sports. In traditional sports, you cannot have double elimination based off the physical prowess that comes with the sport itself. When it comes to esports, it is a little bit more different. There's a reason why the TI, the CSGO majors, Smash tournaments. There's a reason why those are all double elimination. There's a reason why they are. Epic loser bracket runs are also a part of that as well. EG had an epic loser bracket run. Imagine if there was the older system and EG was instantly just knocked out when they lost to Team Liquid back in spring. Remember, back in spring, EG would have gotten knocked out of the whole thing if it was the older system. Now, even with the LCK coming up this year, they've adopted the fact that we're going to do double elimination. So this whole like non-double elim argument is it's really like a lot of it doesn't hold in good weight anyway. You know, like even G2 and the LEC, if they lost to Fnatic in that first round of the spring playoffs earlier last year, they'd be completely out. You would have had G2 at MSI. I mean, God forbid you would have had Rogue there, but holy fucking shit. All right, so that's this part of the video right now. I'm going to do the other video, which is the third one you're going to watch, which is me actually going over what they brought up in this video, right? So, I wanted to make this first video to explain the context surrounding the first video, because I didn't want to just throw away the other video. It was actually very, very good. So, yes, I will see you guys in the next video, which is my initial response to the entirety surrounding the viewership and the other problems with the LCS. And the other video that you're watching after this one isn't just directly criticizing like the initial LCS schedule change. I think people are very, very bad faith actors in the realm of like, you know, like they say, oh, well, the weekends are the best time for the LCS and viewership. Guys, let's just stop that right now. This is what the LCS should stop doing, is cap into these Twitter weirdos. What I mean by that is they have these games on Saturday and Sunday ever since I started watching the LCS, and that was in 2015. 2015 is when I first started watching the LCS, and the viewership was really good at a certain point. But as 2020, 2021, 2022, it just started not doing so well, and it started peaking down lower. So people weren't interested in the LCS. It had nothing to do with any other external factor. You are capping out of your ass. You were just not interested in the LCS, and people were just not watching. I wish people would just be honest with themselves, you know? And instead of all this fucking rabbit hopping bullshit that people do, you just weren't interested, so you weren't watching. That's it. That's mostly what it boils down to. Yes, there are other external factors that play into that. That is very much true. But the bulk of it is that if you really wanted to watch on the weekdays, because they had it at great start times for the weekdays, yet people really lost interest and stopped watching. All right, but I'll see you guys in the next video, and in the final third video, I'll be going over as a response video to this, okay? All right, guys. See you in a second. Yo, what is up guys? It is esports content entertainment coming at you guys with another video here today, and in today's video I am going to be commenting on a new Travis Gafford video titled Riot's Communication and Schedule Are Damaging LCS. I'm pretty sure he means damaging the LCS, but I imagine it's just a simple typo mistake and it's fine. But I just want to let you guys know about a few things before I start commenting on this new Travis Gafford video. That being, yes, I know about the Dash and the Freak, you know, situations with the LCS, and I will be going over those situations on the newest Cloud9 podcast episode on Thursday. As you guys know, if there's any information in any off-season that I pretty much haven't had a chance to cover yet, I'll use the Cloud9 podcast to do so. Normally, I would have made like a quick 10-minute video about Freak retiring from shoutcasting the LCS and Dash essentially being pretty much almost fired from the LCS. I would have made videos about that, but at those current moment in times, I was just very, very busy and I just didn't have enough time to do that. So I thought to myself, why not just do a Cloud9 podcast covering both Dash and Freak, and then also covering the whole problem with being an esports caster from all the information that I've gathered over the years, right? So then another thing that I want to go over is the reason why there's been not that many videos coming out is because I mentioned this in my channel update video, and if you haven't watched it yet, I recommend going and watching that because there's some pretty big announcements in that video as well. The biggest one being 2 Cloud9 podcasts this year, because the LEC and the LCS schedules are so close together that I would have to do an LEC episode primarily by itself to get all that encompassed into one entity, then doing one separate for the LCS. The reason why I was able to do them together was because they were so drastically close together that I could just sum up everything, watch all the games, and then by Tuesday or Wednesday have the episode ready and you guys watch it and we just rinse, wash, repeat. That's been like the Cloud9 podcast thing for a very, very long time, since it started all the way back arguably in 2020, right? But this year is going to be a change since they're so vastly apart from each other. I just have to produce 2 episodes, one strictly focused on the LEC and one strictly focused on the LCS. And I'll be able to add in LCK and LPL content within those episodes, right? Will I have a dedicated episode just to the LCKs at one point in period in time this year? Maybe. It's something that I'm thinking about, but I'm also trying to learn more about Valorant too. I'm trying to get more into that. So I played Valorant. I wasn't really good at it, but I'm gonna keep playing it. I got to get better at it, obviously. So the other thing I want to mention primarily is people talking about the LCS viewership. Now, the LCS viewership is something that I want to just break down for people. Not a lot. Not gonna, because you guys know me. I like to add in a whole lot of context. Don't worry, I'll add in context, but it's gonna be very, very simple. Okay, so the LCK, the LPL, and the LEC all have more viewers than the LCS currently does. The LCS viewership has capped and plateaued long ago. I watch on YouTube, and the highest the YouTube viewership is for the regular season of the LCS for like the last 2 to 3 years, roughly, starting with like 2020, I'd say, has been around like 25,000 viewers, right? That's peak. I'm talking like Cloud9 versus Team Liquid, 100 Thieves versus Cloud9, TSM versus Team Liquid, like the big marquee matchups. When it's a match like Dig versus IMT, it's usually pretty much like at 17K. And I can respect in some regard that they are trying to change up and get more viewers, obviously, right? Because I know there's people that go, well, why'd they move it to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Okay, let's look at that. They're already not gaining any more viewers on the schedule that they're doing it right now on. And people are going to bitch and moan they're not doing anything about the viewership numbers being very, very low. So this is their way of obviously switching it up and trying to see if this is going to obviously fix the viewership problem. I'm not shilling for Riot. I will never shill for Riot, but I can understand why they did it. I don't really like it per se because Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 12 p.m. PST, I mean, I'll have to just watch the games on my break. Wednesday I can watch because they said Wednesday will primarily be for like super weeks actually. So like week 1 and week 9, you'll have super weeks, which will be Wednesday broadcast day. I can watch on Wednesday the whole thing. But when it comes to Thursday and Friday, gonna be pretty hard for me. But I will watch. Now, this is the thing. If you really like watching the LCS, as much as some people claim, you'll watch it. Whether it be a rebroadcast or you'll watch the VODs. I don't understand what's wrong with watching VODs. You're watching the game anyway. We're like, I'm gonna get spoiled. Well, fuck, I don't know. Get off those certain parts of the internet. Don't go on your phone. I don't fucking know. Stop bitching and moaning. Fucking losers, man. Then, another thing is that there's not been really any genuine interest in watching the LCS, right? Because people go out of their way to watch the LEC, the LCK, the LPL, even the CB LOL had more viewers than the LCS. Even Carmine Corp games had more viewers than the LCS. And it's not just based in those fan bases. Like, people actively think those, like LEC, the LPL, and the LCK, not like CB LOL or EE Masters, right? Just those other 3 major regions, right? People go out of their way from the West to watch those regions. What's your excuse there? People are like, oh, blah, 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 blah. It's a bunch of bullshit. I'll just tell you like it is. It's not, okay, I'll be nice here. People aren't genuinely interested in watching the LCS anymore for a lot of different reasons, right? People are genuinely interested in watching the LEC. They're genuinely interested in watching the LPL. They're genuinely interested in watching the LCK for a lot of different reasons. One, the LCK is the best region in the world, along with the LPL. So to a casual's mind, and since there's broadcast, and casuals suck up whatever the casters say, obviously, right? If the casters say LCK is best region, LPL best region, yeah, a casual is gonna hear that and go, I'm gonna watch the best region. As a person myself, look at it this way. If you're trying to get better at something, you're going to watch the best people, right? So if you're trying to get better at League, why would you watch the LCS and you know LCS is not very good? You could be a casual, veteran, still new to the game, doesn't matter. That strictly doesn't matter if you're a casual. What matters is people will watch the best regions. That's just how it works. People watch the best games in NFL and the NBA. These are just factual numbers you can look up to yourself. The best games with the most prominent teams get the most viewers. That's it. Okay? There's no genuine interest in watching the LCS as much anymore. I know that's harsh to say. I know. But hey, it is what it is. I'm gonna tell it like it is. I've been doing that for years on this channel. I'm not gonna sugarcoat. I'm gonna give a fuck about what Riot does. Piece of shit company to a certain extent, right? There's no interest in watching. How you about to tell me, like, it's not casuals. People just watch the best regions because they're better. Why would... Okay, even if you didn't know nothing about the LCS, just looking at it from this year alone, if you're a new viewer and you're just watching the LCS on the world stage, just this year alone, not talking any of the year, just isolating this year, the LCS performed like shit internationally. The LEC didn't do that well either, so that's here and there. I think they're still living off that G2 Fnatic success from 2018 through obviously 2020, but that's different. I'm talking just strictly this year, right? Strictly this year, the LCS was dog shit at international events. EG beat T1 at MSI 2022 in one game. The LCS, outside of just that, the LCS did not take a single game off any LPL or any LCK teams. Besides that one EG versus T1 upset, which T1 completely threw that game. Go back and watch that. They threw that game. Okay? They didn't beat the LPL a single time this year at all. Neither did they do that to the LCK. The LCS sucked this year. So as a casual, would you want to watch the LCS knowing they suck that bad? No, you're not. People from America watch the LPL and the LCK because they're just better. I know I do. I'll go out of my way to watch this shit. I probably shouldn't given my sleep schedule. The LCK and the LPL premiere like 12 my time, 1 my time sometimes. I'll stay up, watch a quick BO3, go to bed, and then go to work, you know? I think people will go out of their way to watch a better product if the competition is better. Competition's better, casting's better, everything's better. Why would you watch the LCS? The only reason why you'd watch the LCS is because you just genuinely like to watch it. Just admit that. I like to watch the LCS. I do. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But I'm not going to sit here and fucking bullshit to people saying, well, casuals don't know. Casuals know exactly what's up. Casuals know the LPL and LCK are better, so they watch the best regions. It is what it is. That's what it is. Now, the LCS also has other issues with that itself, but that's what I personally believe. Sorry, this was a bit long. I had to make sure I get it out of the way because I think people are just on some copium shit where they're thinking about, why don't people watch the LCS anymore? Probably because the LCS went 3-15 at Worlds. Every year at Worlds, we essentially suck outside of what Cloud9 does at Worlds. Obviously, my boys right there. But even Cloud9 this year failed at Worlds, you know? So even our best hope internationally, which is Cloud9, even they failed at Worlds, you know? So you give me a reason why a casual would watch LCS outside of the LCK. You give me one flat-out good reason why you should. Other than the fact that you just genuinely like it. And it's just League and you just want to watch League. You know? Just being honest here. If people say they lost interest in the LCS, I don't blame them. Fucking region stinks. It's copium to say that it's good. It's not been good. A few upsets here and there. Let's go over this.
Alright, this is attempt 3 on this video. It's sponsored by Alienware. I have done this multiple times now. I did one actually right after Riot's scheduling change news came out at the end of last year, right before they went on break. It looked really good. I didn't like the way it came out. Drew did a good job making it look pretty, but didn't come out well. Then I did this again, and I just didn't think it was good. So we're just going to speak from the heart and see how well we can cover the issue.
People do call Travis a shill, so... Oh no, this man's... I don't hate this guy, obviously. I met this guy before. I took a picture with him. I don't think he's a bad person. But I do think he can shill. But then again, it's just kind of how the business is. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is, obviously.
Issue, of course, being Riot's scheduling change for the LCS, their communication around it, and then kind of tangentially, we're going to talk a little bit about the Dash stuff too, because that fits into it. If you didn't see, Dash announced today that he's not going to be hosting the LCS next year.
I think that's a flat out L. Not Travis, obviously, but kicking out Dash, that's just a fat L. Freak retired, but I'll talk about that in a second. Dash, obviously, not being what the LCS thinks they need. You're gonna give me Latigris? Oh hell nah. Oh god. None of the other people on the broadcast desk really have what Dash brings. I'm not just singling out Latigris. I'm not trying to be mean, but her, Emily Rant, Mark, Raz, Jack probably can run the analyst desk. I think Jack can, but all the rest of them, no, they don't have what Dash has. Dash should be the last person you should get rid of. Now, the LCS is downsizing because that FTX sponsorship that they had, that's gone away. Oh, the LCS has made a lot of bad errors. For you, anybody that's new watching this, I could detail all the LCS issues from when I first started watching it, basically till now, and you'd go like, damn.
Well, this season, and a lot of people have been talking about that. So let's dive in. One, the prevailing sentiment from everybody seems to be that Riot has decided that Valorant is the most important thing now. LCS must suffer and die a lonely, sad death because it's not relevant.
I mean, if that's what the viewers are watching, then I can't disagree with those takes, though. Like, and that's a business strategy, too. Like, I don't show for Riot. You guys know I don't. But from a business point of view, if more people are watching Valorant, then the primetime day should be for Valorant.
I don't blame anybody for thinking this. If you go into Reddit threads, if you go on Twitter, there's a ton of people that are just like, hey, you know, if you look at people leaving the broadcast, that probably is something to do with budget cuts. People have been pointing at the FTX report about how much money Riot was making from the FTX sponsorship. Now that's gone, so people think like, oh, that's probably more budget cuts. And then you just see the fact that like Valorant is getting the weekend and LCS is moving to the weekdays, and people think like, okay, they've decided that Valorant is going to be it for North America. LCS is no longer worth trying to keep prop afloat, so they're just going to let it die alone. It is really important that you understand that that is not the case.
Their actions show otherwise, though, dude. Their actions show... I know that's what they say. They'll say that. Actions show otherwise. Now, I do believe on some level, on Riot's fucked up brain, I believe on some level they care about the LCS. I do, because there are teams that spend a lot of money into those slots. There are. But it should be shown a lot differently. That's what I'll say.
That is the whole purpose. The whole purpose of this video kind of hinges on you agreeing with me that that is not the case. So let me try to convince you. Number one, I talk to people at Riot on the esports side and outside of the esports side constantly, at high levels of the company, at low levels of the company, and no one there has ever told me that Riot is trying to shutter the LCS. Quite the contrary. Everybody really thinks that there's a pretty big alarm bell going on inside Riot about the LCS. I think, quite frankly, it took too long for the alarm bell to come through. I think they were kind of able to hand wave a lot during the COVID.
I mean, the signs were there, man. Like, if anyone's been watching as long as I have, the signs have been there. I've been watching the LCS fully since 2015. I started in 2014 watching Worlds 2014, but I first started watching the LCS in 2015 along with the EU LCS. And the LCS, man, they should have saw us coming, man. And I'll go more into that in a future video or the podcast tomorrow, but...
COVID era and like, oh, you know, like COVID makes it tough. There's a viewership spike associated with that for a little bit. And so people were kind of writing stuff off, but no, people really are, one, worried about the LCS, and two, they think it's very important that it succeeds. I know some of you are probably going to say, well, like, oh, well, Travis, people are just telling you that, or you don't believe me when I say this, but like, I talk to a lot of people, they are frustrated with things. They could tell me, they're willing to shit talk, let's put it that way, and none of them ever tell me, like, Riot's given up on the LCS. Everybody internally is under the impression that it is a big...
But, okay, so let's just say for argument's sake that's true. For just argument's sake. Why get rid of people... Like, LCS has already lost prominent figures that did bring in viewership. not gonna keep the person that's been running the desk as long as he has?
Big, important goal for the company to turn around LCS, at least for the esports side of the company. Maybe you think I'm just getting scammed by all these people. So let's talk about some other things here then. Well, Riot has a pretty big ego as a company. I think a lot of you can probably agree with that. There's a lot of folks there that think that the company is incredibly superior to other companies, that it is just a company capable of doing incredible, amazing things. And in some ways, they have done some pretty impressive stuff that people don't want to give them the credit for. But all that has given them a huge ego. It would be incredibly damaging to that ego if their number one esport, because again, LoL esports is still their biggest esport around the world. It is their premier sport. Obviously, they want to grow Val, but like right now, it's still League of Legends. It's their biggest game. It would be very damaging for their ego if the sport that takes place across the street from their headquarters dies in the home region of the company. Like, that is not something that they are down for. They would not allow for that to happen without putting up a fight.
Then why don't they build better shit? Like better hype videos. Well, there was a period point in time we didn't even get hype videos for matches because viewership. You can't bring on better viewership if you're not doing things consistently. Like, League viewership hasn't really been that for what they're thinking in a long time. There's going to be an average viewership. You can grow that. You can make the LCS its own thing, like the LEC, the LPL, the LCK, all the other ones, right? The thing here to understand is they just haven't been doing that. I mean, there's so many things they could do better. So many things. They just choose not to.
They wouldn't choose to just be like, fuck it, let's move on from League of Legends. Again, think about it in a global sense. Like, this game is huge outside of North America. It's not like there's any particular reason to think that League of Legends should just be thrown to the side for Riot. Another reason, there's a financial reason here too. Yes, obviously they lost money. Well, they lost revenue with the FTX deal dying, and I've heard that there's a couple other sponsors that didn't renew either. But the global part of League of Legends esports makes a considerable amount of money from North American sponsors. So think about Worlds, think about MSI. You see Verizon on that broadcast. You see MasterCard on that broadcast. They just announced like a huge extension to the MasterCard deal even at Worlds. It is not going to be good for keeping these sponsors paying a ton of money into the global sport if the sport dies in their region, right? Like, if there's no League of Legends esports of significance in North America, Verizon is probably not going to, one, obviously sponsor what's left of that in the region, but two, pony up the money to sponsor the global part of it too. I also think it's really important to note that, like, as they're trying to build Val, do you think that it's a good look if the other esport that's been around for a long time dies in North America, right? Like, they want to have a strong story about how they've done.
I don't truly think they want it to die, right? But if that's what's going through their minds right now, then why not have fixed these things sooner? Why is it that when they have a fucking slash on their chest, blood gushing out, is when they start actually taking action? They should have been taking action with this stuff years ago. I'm not talking just even just this year. These are year problems this league has had.
All these incredible things in League of Legends esports, and if that league dies, it's going to make people far more hesitant to invest into or spend money around Val. Like, it's just not a thing that would be true. Finally, again, going back to the whole thing around Val versus League, and like, are they doing this to bolster Val? Like, I'm so frustrated because Riot's done such a poor job of communicating around this. But the truth is, LCS
Riot has poor transparency and communication, just like a lot of companies do.
this would probably be moving to the weekdays even if Valorant didn't even exist. It was reported in the Blix article by Alejandra, who was the first person to break the news about all this stuff, that's not related to Val. That the scheduling change for Thursdays and Fridays, not related to Val. I've heard this stuff long before the Val stuff. I don't, like, it's impossible to change this now because the narrative has just caught on, and because Riot's done just such a piss poor job of like fighting against it, which drives me crazy because, like, they should know. They should totally know that this is going to be a thing. In fact, they do know because, again, they had months of preparation to prepare these two stupid articles that came out last minute at the end of the year, less than 48 hours before they went on break. And because this news got leaked in like October, they knew this was a huge issue, and they just did such a poor job of properly approaching it. I don't know how else to say it, but Riot has a lot of incentives to keep LCS alive. They don't have any incentives for this thing to die.
I don't want LCS to die either. I've been watching LCS for 8 years of my life. About to be 9 years with this year added. Like, goddamn, I've been watching this shit for my majority of my life at this point. I just couldn't imagine not it being part of my life. But the thing here is, they said they had like data to back up all that shit. Like, what they really want to do is they want to grab in the European viewers, because the European viewers are obviously much more bigger, right? And they want to grab in the global fan base to watch the LCS, right?
So like, as much and again, I don't blame you, because they've done not a great job of dissuading people from this, but please trust me when I say that like they want LCS to thrive, they want it to grow, they want to restore it to the prestige that it used to have, and
that's going to be very hard if that's what they want to do. I don't doubt that it's possible, but God, what I guess. I mean, they can do it, but yeah, like my dad can be a part of my life again. Probably not gonna happen.
The rest of this video, if you don't believe me right now, you should not watch the rest of this video, because it's pointless, because you have to have that premise going into the conversation I want to have. So now that we've had that conversation and you've decided to stick around, let's talk about the two big things here. One, the communication around all this stuff, which I've already complained a little bit about, but we're going to dive in a little bit more on. And two, my biggest concern, which is actually the schedule for the LCS. Not the days, but the time. So let's talk about the comms. As I mentioned, the decision to put this out in 2 articles right before the start of the break is terrible. I'm actually really happy that my other videos did not pop off, or that I didn't post the one last year, because now I get to renew this conversation. So let's do me a favor, everybody. If you're watching this video, just pretend that Riot put out all the information now, because I think it is annoying to me, the idea that like they would rush this out last minute and then let it die over the holidays. So let's all just agree to pretend that like they just announced this now, and react accordingly, have the conversation accordingly. Don't accept this as a thing that's old news now. So again, it is so aggravating to me that they had so much time to prepare for this conversation, and how crucial this conversation is, because so many of the fans and the people in the ecosystem are really burned out on the negativity around the LCS, right? They need reasons to be hopeful for 2023. Honestly,
that I can agree with. Yeah, there's this big negativity around the LCS. I mean, there are positive things the LCS does. I mention them a lot too, but I can agree with that.
The teams did a pretty good job of assembling rosters that make people pretty excited. Like coming out of offseason, I feel like people were pretty optimistic about a new level of parity within the LCS, with teams putting out together rosters that should be pretty entertaining. And then you turn to Riot and you say, okay, well, what do you got for us to get us excited for 2023? And they release these like 2 articles that are just filled with stuff that does not feel particularly exciting. The award for worst part of that goes to the stupid Snapple bottle fact that they decided to include in their reasoning behind making these changes. Picking what to watch can be a chore. Research shows that the average person makes 35,000 decisions a day, and deciding what match to watch shouldn't be one of them. By scheduling our games right, you have to only choose to watch, not what to watch, simplifying the process. It doesn't simplify the process if people have to choose between if they can watch this match at 12 o'clock on the West Coast, or go to a meeting that they have scheduled with their manager. Like, of all the things to include, and the funny thing about that fact is it just tells me, like, when I read it, that is not a fact that they included haphazardly. It's definitely a fact that after Riot had already decided to make the decision to move this thing to 12 o'clock, somebody included it in a PowerPoint presentation internally. It's like, oh, here's another reason. It's like people make too many decisions.
What they should do, it's not really about the days. It's more like about the time structure. The time structure, why not put it like 3 o'clock? Put it like 3 o'clock. Put it like 2 o'clock. At least 2 o'clock. 12 is just such a time slot. I don't like. The days are fine. I don't care if it's. I've always kind of liked the idea of weekday LCS shit. They used to have Monday Night League for a bit, but people just kept bitching and moaning about it. They got rid of it. But, like, I do like the idea of weekday LCS things. I personally do. But the time structure, at least 2 o'clock. Come on. I mean, that helps out for East Coast people too, you know?
Well, thanks, Riot. Now the decision needs to be, can they even continue to care about the LCS because you've changed it to such a shitty time? Like, it just it's just such a an example, right? Like, by no means is that the most damaging thing in these articles, but it is the stupidest thing. Like, you come out, you have to convince people that the unpopular decision that you have made and that there's been discussion about for months is a is a good thing. And what you decide to do is include a fucking random ass fact like that. It's just so bad.
Gamefly is the best way.
Gamefly is the best way to fly in your mom's asshole. Or Bella Danger's asshole.
Some of the issue is that Jackie Felling, the commissioner, is away for health issues. She obviously would have been a great person to be able to communicate about this stuff, but like, do an AMA, do other stuff, do a video with other people. Don't wait until the last minute to publish this stuff when you know it's going to come, so that like somebody in the last minute has like a health emergency and you can't do it. It's just like, it just gets so frustrated because one of the biggest issues with the LCS right now is the reputation around the league and the perception of how Riot cares about it, and they just can't seem to get out of their own way around this stuff. And it's not that hard. It's just not that hard. And you see all of this come out in the reception to all of it. Ironically, the leaked news, I think, was actually more well received than when they officially put out the news. Because when it first got leaked, there was a conversation around, like, okay, is it bad that the LCS is moving to weekdays? And there's actually a lot of nuance in the response from people. There were a lot of folks who said, oh, yeah, you know, I have aged or my schedule has changed or whatever, and having this on weekdays is better than the weekends for me. Now, obviously, a lot of you also thought the weekends were better, but at least there was like what felt like from the outside like a 50-50 response to stuff. And it made me feel like, okay, well, maybe the schedule can work just fine. But then they come out and they announce that it's going to be at noon. And especially in the second article, they have really poor, they did a really poor job of just addressing that, which was not well received. Brian Kibler, who I know has watched the league forever, he tweeted about this and he said, like, that he feels like LCS is actually dead and that's one of the worst broadcast decisions ever made. And this is a guy who defended Magic the Gathering's 30th anniversary edition. Just kidding, Brian. I love you, but but like it's just universally been considered terrible by brands that I've talked to, like sponsors, by broadcast folks, like people internally at Riot. Like nobody is excited about this 12 o'clock thing, unless you live in Europe. And I just like it's such an obvious example of
That's why they made the decision. It's better for Europe. European viewers can't watch the LCS because if it goes on certain time, they just can't watch. They're like 8 hours ahead. Most European countries are like 7 to 8 hours ahead. East Coast is already 3 hours ahead too. And there's more East Coast people that live in the United States. There's more people on the East Coast than the West Coast. That's been statistically proven. So if you could make a time slot where most of those guys can watch, that'll improve the viewership. That's what they're thinking.
Of how Riot's comm strategy failed to convince anybody, folks on the team side, whatever, whoever, outside of Riot and many people inside Riot, they just don't buy this 12 o'clock thing. And so it's just poor. And before we go on to the second half of this, which is like the 12 o'clock thing, which I think is the big issue, this stuff kind of extends over to the Dash stuff, right? So Dash announced, as I record this today, that he was going to be hosting the broadcast. Riot's completely silent about it. I guess they retweeted it. And I don't really understand why you would just, like, when there's so much negativity out there about the league and recent decisions, and there's a lot of people thinking actively that you are killing the league, why would you just let that hang? When I know that there's actually a pretty big effort internally to change the broadcast away from feeling super sportsy, right? So they're changing the broadcast The fact that it's not going to feel super sportsy, they don't necessarily need like the host that they've had in the past, like the hosting role. I'm not talking about Dash. I think Dash is great. I think he's super fucking talented and deserves all the acclaim that he's gotten over the years.
Well, I'll go over this in the Cloud9 podcast, but I think Dash actually asked for a better rate because we know that casters have a day rate. If you guys don't know what that is, I can't explain it right now, obviously, in this video, but Dash makes a certain amount of money as the rate he has to host the analyst test skin. And it's been quite known that if they try to negotiate a higher rate, Riot pretty much goes, yeah, we're not doing that. We'll just use somebody else. And if that person will do it for your price and they don't not like that price, that's fine. We'll just get someone else. So basically, it's like Dash most likely asked for a better rate. Most likely. I'm not saying he did, but throwing out there. He asked for a better rate. They were like, no. And we're also changing the, desk up, so we don't really need a host, so you can just, not be here as well. And if they factor in, they can just find someone else who will not want to make a higher pay outside of that. They can just use that other person. Why do people think there's no more lock-in? They have to pay people to cast lock-in, right? There's been no more lock-in. There's no more all-stars. Why? Caster rates. Casters will want better pay. And then since they know that casters have only this because their whole lives are built around League, they can easily just replace them.
But okay, Dash announces this. Come out with a post or some sort of video talking about LCS broadcast in 2023, and you say, hey, over the years, when LCS first started, we really focused on trying to put the sports in esports, and we felt like emulating traditional sports broadcast style was really important in defining and getting credit for what esports can be, and we think it was really successful. But as time has gone on, the expectations from our audience has changed, and we no longer feel like we need to prove ourselves by emulating sports as a product.
They'll never admit that. They'll never admit that. You already said they have too much of a big ego. They're never going to admit that shit.
And so to that end, we're going to be making changes in the style of the broadcast. We think these are going to be really exciting. Unfortunately, this also means that certain roles will be changing, and we're really excited to work with Dash in a completely different capacity, and we hope that you all will receive this well when we are sort of experimenting and learning and trying different things. Wouldn't that have been received better by everybody rather than sort of this?
Probably 50-50, given the fact that they're getting rid of Dash. They're getting rid of Dash, of all people. I'm not trying to be mean here, but there's other people they could literally get rid of other than Dash that are much worse than him. Just saying.
Thing where you're completely silent and it just kind of perpetuates the idea that the broadcast is cutting and it's being put out to pasture. And again, just so that nobody misconstrues this, I think Dash is great. I think it seems like they could have done a much better job of working with him to make sure he had clear understanding of what his role will be going into the next year and the ways in which that they could work with him. Again, he's super talented. He comes from acting. I think you can do a lot of really cool stuff with that. But again, they could have just communicated around this better. Now let's get back to the scheduling stuff. Obviously, the comms around the scheduling changes has failed. I think part of that is the comm side. I think also part of it is because it's just a bad idea. You are going to be putting LCS at the same time as Jerry Springer reruns and the Ellen show, it's daytime talk show stuff. It's not primetime TV time for any North Americans.
Well, people have been cord cutting quite a bit, and Jerry Springer reruns are fire.
Right? People...
I'd rather watch Abella Danger get her complete asshole blown the fuck out than watch LCS. Well, to be fair, I could watch her asshole getting blown out, and then I could watch LCS at the same time.
People are at fucking work. I've heard, really quickly, I just want to address this, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, work has changed a lot, and a lot of people are at home, and they're watching the LCS broadcast on the second screen while they're working. That is a very privileged perspective. I talk to a lot of people who come up to me at events and they tell me that my podcast helps get them through their long haul truck drive or working at a warehouse or whatever. A small percentage relative to the rest of the US population actually works from home. and that a lot of people are returning to the office. Like Riot is actually making a lot of people return to the office. You can't always work at a office job even where you can just have a video game tournament happening on a second monitor if you have access to a second monitor. Like it's just very out of touch, I think, with what the average person does for their job to just assume that everybody has some cush job where they have two monitors set up at home and they can just chill and have the game going on the other. Again, by the way, you have fucking meetings you have to do. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. But again, going back to
Riot's been out of touch for a while. I mean, yeah, I mean, I do agree with that to a certain extent, but it's one of these things of like, yeah, people worked from home because of COVID. Now they make them come back to the office. Makes perfect sense, obviously. It's one of these things where I hope this data that they had in this board meeting really is going to pay off. I could see this not working out as good just this year alone. I could even see them changing the days and times midway through this year, maybe early in spring. If the days and time don't improve on the numbers, I could easily see them changing it come the summer split, coming out latter half of this year.
The stuff, a lot of the people that I've talked to on the team side or elsewhere are telling me that they're like, oh yeah, we expect this experiment to fail, and then we just hope that Riot's willing to change the schedule if it doesn't work well, and we'll change it by 2 to 3 hours. And for me, one of my big concerns is that a lot of you, and I see this talked about online a lot of people have been feeling pretty fatigued with the LCS, very gloomy about the future of the LCS. And when you
I can see this time scheduling failing. I don't want any of this to fail. I'm just being honest. I don't want any of this to fail. I can see them keeping the same days, but changing the time slots up. That's what I think. I think if it doesn't really improve the viewership at spring, I think they'll change it. That's what I think might happen.
Tell people that this product is not for them by placing it at a time that is incredibly inaccessible for them, which is again like lunchtime on the West Coast, 3 o'clock on the East Coast. And then, by the way, if you missed this, you can go look at the schedule. All the best matches are stuck at that time. It's not even a situation where you're building to those matches. You have them right at the beginning. So if you live on the West Coast and you are busy at 12 or 1 o'clock on a Thursday or Friday, you don't get to watch the best LCS matches unless you're willing to watch a replay later on. And I don't think very many people are. So when you tell these people that the LCS is no longer for them because you've placed it at a time inaccessible for them, they're probably just going to fucking walk away. They're going to go into 2023 expecting that they're not going to watch the LCS. And if you change it 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, they've already moved on. You can't, how do you get them back? You have to then figure out a way to recapture those people, to tell them, oh, by the way, we've changed it to more accommodate you. They've already missed the first several weeks of the league. Like, are they really going to come back? That is my big concern here. And when I talk, by the way, about them saying the LCS is not for you, and when I talk about 2 to 3 hours of difference, because that's what I think it is, by the way, if you start the broadcast at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock on the West Coast, you end up with way better times for those last couple of matches on the East Coast and on the West Coast. A 2 to 3 hour start time difference could mean people actually still buying in to this product.
You want your enemies to be so...
Is that 1923? Looks like a show that I probably should watch.
And I say North America because what's obviously clear from the articles that they've posted, and when you look at like a time zone map, is that what they are trying to do is grow the LCS audience by looking at the Western audience rather than the North American audience, which is crazy to me. This is a North American product. The LCS exists as a product for North American fans, or at least it should, because it's a North American league. The LEC is there for European fans, and I like European fans. They kind of shit talk me during Worlds a lot, but I don't dislike them. But I think that when you are targeting Western fans in Europe rather than...
The bigger demographic is in Europe, though. That's the problem. It's not about League not being popular to that extent here. It's more like, I see what he's saying. Like, if this time change doesn't work and people already were like, I'm not watching, you're going to see that potentially go in one of two ways. They'll watch later on when they realize the time slots changed. Because word will get out that time slots will be moved. So, even if people don't want, even if people can't watch, or they just choose to give up on it right now, word will get out that the time slots have changed if the viewership numbers haven't increased from this new adventure they're trying to go on right now. That's just what's going to happen, you know?
Than Western fans in North America. For your North American league, you're doing something wrong, because do you think that the person in Germany or the person in the UK or France or wherever is going to be buying tickets to go to the LCS Spring Finals or to watch a match in the LCS studio? Or are they going to sign up for Verizon 5G service after watching a post-game interview? This league needs North American viewers, right? You already put almost all of your global events at times that are inaccessible to the North American audience, and now you're going to do the same thing with the North American League. Do you have so...
Well, the thing here about the other inaccessible time slots with the LPL, LEC, LCK is people watch those. It's not really about that. It's more like they have enough interest in that league. People don't care about that. They'll watch. They just watch in general. It doesn't matter. But for this league, there's just not much interest in it. That's what I think.
A little faith in this audience that you're unwilling to actually put the games at a time?
I don't have faith in this audience. I'm not trying to be mean here. A lot of these audience are full of left-wing Twitter blue-haired weirdos who talk a lot of shit, say they're about some shit, and they're really not. If I'm Riot, I gotta side with them on that one. A lot of you people on Twitter are just fucking weirdos, and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and you just are a bunch of left-wing shill media weirdos. But in those, that's not an audience though. That's not a big audience for all these fucking left-wing weirdos, and it doesn't matter in general. They need to capture like the casual viewers again. That's what they need to capture, not Twitter weirdos.
Which they can watch them? It's crazy. So this leads me to the end of this video, where I just want to say, behind the scenes, I've talked to a lot of people. They're pretty concerned about this. A lot of people are really concerned about this in the industry. And again, a lot of them think, oh, it's okay. Hopefully when it fails, right, we'll just move it. I don't know how much damage will be done in those first several pivotal weeks that are the kickoff to the season that won't be able to be recovered. And I know you guys have slightly hemmed and hawed on social media, or you've been silent publicly, but then been very vocal privately. I please, I ask of you, go talk to your Riot contacts. I think the Thursday, Friday stuff is actually not that big of a deal. I'm down for that experiment. I think a lot of people are too. It is worth trying. 12 o'clock is not a time that North American viewers can watch. 3 o'clock is also not a time that most North American viewers can watch. It is not a good idea to be doing this. It is going to cause a lot of damage to a league that is very fragile right now. And that
even with the weekends, even with my job, I missed a good amount of the LCS games anyway, at least the big pivotal ones. When I would get home or when I would get off of work, like I would be watching games 4, 5, and 6, right? Because there's 6 games you play, I think, right? So the last 3 games I would pretty much be able to watch. But other than that, yeah, I myself, even on the weekends, would miss games, but I managed to watch them,
needs to be able to be watched by people in its home region. So please go talk to folks at Riot if you...
But, okay, so I have to also say this too. Because they kept the same days for a very, very long time. So let's just look at the last few years when it had considerably better, days and time slots. People didn't really watch. So it's not a people... Well, it is a people issue, right? It is. But looking at just this past year, or 2022, right? Which had better time zones, right? And better days. People still didn't watch. So what's the real issue? There's another underlying issue there. And, Travis brought it up. There's been a lot of negativity around the league, right? 2021, same days, Saturday, Sunday. I think they started at what, 2 something like, 1, whatever, 2 or some shit like that. Same viewership, same peaks, same everything. Is it really the days or the time slots, or is it the interest in the league itself?
You have any kind of sway with them. If you are a player, talk to the Players Association, get them on board with this. If you are a sponsor, if you are a team, person, please go talk to Riot about this. I know I mentioned this elsewhere, but like the teams were talked to about the time stuff, but they did not get a chance to like vote on it or anything like that. They didn't have a say. So yeah, I think this is really rough, but big issues around comms, big issue around the timing. Makes me really worried, makes me really frustrated. Riot, please get your fucking show together, because I love this product and I just want it to succeed.
I do too. I love the LCS. I 100% do. I love it. But at a certain point, you gotta stop being on fucking copium, and you gotta understand, like, there's not interest. The interest can be built back with players. The players have a big problem with it too, but that's a different story, or different argument, conversation in its entirety. But the thing here to understand is, if they can bring back the interest in the league, the time slots won't be the problem. The days aren't the issue. I like the days. The time slots can be changed if enough people vote on it. If they can do that. I mean, the LEC players fought for a better format, so that happened. I mean, but the thing here is, we've had the LCS for the last 3 years and other years, Friday, Saturday, better time slots on the weekends, prime time, when more people could watch. It didn't bring in more viewers though. Like, that's some copium shit. That's you gotta be on crack. People are so fucking delusional. I love it. I love the delusion from these people, these left-wing dumbasses on Twitter who don't watch the games. These are virtue signaling weirdos who have blue-colored hair. Don't fucking actually watch this shit. Riot should stop catering to Twitter weirdos. You should probably not do that. And look at what's there. They had the LCS in primetime days and people still didn't watch. That's not a day. That's not a time slot thing. And you'd be lying to yourself if you told me it's otherwise. But that's how I see it. So more response videos are coming. What do you guys think about this video? Let me know in the comment section below. Let me know, why do you think the LCS changes will work or not? Dash Freak, let me know about that stuff. See you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. I am MSK, and this is Esports Content Entertainment, your one place for esports content. Alright guys, deuces. Peace. Alright, I am back, and I'm going to be doing my final response video in combination with the other 2 videos. So, if you were at this part of the video, I did an initial clip explaining the context surrounding this video. My second video is my response video to Travis Gafford's initial Riot Games communication video, and then we are going to be going over this very long video where you're probably going to have both these two capping out their ass with their bad decision. Now, before I want to go over this video, I want to make sure I explicitly state this. Riot Games had brought up in their really shitty article where they explain why they really can't do double elimination at Worlds, which is so fucking bad. They explain that they actually had data that supported them making this LCS schedule change decision, right? Okay, so the thing here is that if you did all this research and the research supported this decision, I don't understand why not fully go through with it. You know, like, they tried it out for one kickoff event. And it was pretty bad, so it's not like they didn't try it out per se. But the thing here is, what is going on in these meetings then? Because who the freak brought up these? That just blows my mind. It's like, wait a minute, whoa. They apparently did a lot of research to show that this was the best route for the LCS viewership, was moving the actual timings of it, right? The schedule. Not just the days, but the actual timing itself, right? But the problem here is going like, what the fuck? You just back out of it? Now, if the owners of the LCS have a big problem with and concern with the whole scheduling changes, that makes sense to change it because they are investing into the league. But Riot Games, or LCS, LCS doesn't really, like, communicate with the fans all too much, and you should be giving the fans what they want. I just wouldn't cap to some of these Twitter weirdos. But, yeah, I'm gonna grab a drink really quickly. Sorry, it's the morning right now. I usually have my blanket around my legs in the morning. Because as you guys know, it's my day off, so I'm gonna try and just chill and relax, you know? But I can't wait to have the LCS back. I mean, we're gonna be doing competitive predictions, coming up with me and Warren for the LEC and the LPL, and then, or any other big LCK games that are going on. We'll have that for the LCS as well. That's for the Cloud9 podcast. Competitive predictions are going to be LEC and LCS focus. Me and Warren for LEC, and me and Chaz for the LCS. But when Chaz starts joining LEC more, he can obviously join on. All right, let's go.
Hello, everyone. I am at Riot Games today to talk to John Needham, president of esports.
Hi, everyone.
And Naz Alitaha, who is the head of global law esports at Riot.
Hello.
And we should say that this is the second time I have done this interview. I was here 2 days ago on stage at the studio where we talked about everything. And then yesterday I got a call saying that almost everything in the interview was now irrelevant and outdated because there's a big change that you have made. So here to talk a little bit about the update, what has changed, Naz?
Yes. Well, after the feedback that we've received from the North American community about the new start times for the LCS, we are going to make a change. We're really grateful for the feedback.
Not gonna lie, she is kind of hot in this like sexy MILF kind of way,
And as a result of it, the broadcasts on Thursdays and Fridays are now going to start at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
I even said that too. Changing the days doesn't really matter. The timing is really the most important factor. I even literally said, why not start at like 2? Man, I'm a fucking genius.
And that's a change, for those that don't know, from 12 p.m. Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. So I know that a lot of people were pushing, including even myself, for about a 2 or 3 hour change time. What was the sort of methodology by which you arrived at 2 o'clock? Was it just, hey, this is what people want? Or is it, a decision where you looked at it and you're like, okay, this still kind of syncs well with maybe getting a more global audience as well? So what went into 2 o'clock?
Yeah, well, we took the feedback, we came back to our teams, we really kind of looked through the data to try to find a time that first and foremost is optimized for a North American audience. So we feel like 2 p.m., which is 5 p.m. on the East Coast, fits hopefully the lifestyles and the needs of our North American fans. 5 p.m. Eastern, when we have a 5-hour or so broadcast, it means that we end around 10 or 10:30. We didn't want to go too much later than that because we think that wouldn't be ideal for fans on the East Coast or even Central Time Zone. So that's where we nailed down that 2 p.m., 5 p.m. Eastern. The original noon start time was intended to really kind of maximize the available audience for the LCS of the English-speaking community. But again, as we saw, how fans were feeling about it, we wanted to make sure that we were accommodating North American fans first and foremost.
Yeah. I think, obviously, East Coast fans probably pretty happy with this. West Coast fans still going to be feeling a little frustrated with the 2 p.m. Any thoughts on...
Man, fuck them West Coast fans. I'm on the West Coast. West Coast is best coast, but... Yeah, I mean, that's just the best time. Like, I don't agree that they're trying to still capitalize on an NA viewership. I don't know, that's still maybe cap, but that's fine. That's completely fine. It's all good.
And how this will affect them.
Yeah, it's tough in the U.S. I think a lot of our other regions don't have this time zone to really consider when they're setting their start time. So, we're hopeful that through match scheduling, we'll make sure that fans on the West Coast are also able to access the best of the league, when they want on a daily basis. So it'll be an iterative process, as we go through the season, as we kind of understand the viewing patterns and behaviors and needs on these new days and these new times, we'll be making sure that the team's adjusting as we go.
Yeah, and we have about 70% of our North American audience that's on the East Coast. So as we looked at all the time zones...
Yeah, that's probably going to be true. There are more people that live on the East Coast than the West Coast, actually, even though California accumulates for a large amount of the population in the U.S., which is already crazy to think about.
Looking at the Midwest and the East Coast was one that we would lean more to when we think about broadcast times.
Yeah. You mentioned the matches that will be played. When people were looking at the schedule that got released, it looks like it looked like at the time that it was front loaded with the sort of matches of the day, the big matches in the beginning. Are you still planning on having it programmed that way? Is this something that'll shift over time? How are you
It's a,
approaching?
it's something that is going to be malleable over time. We're not going to change that, those first few weeks, that schedule, because we've already communicated that to the pro teams, and it'd be pretty unfair for them who, they've been prepping and scrimming against that match schedule. So we want to make sure that we keep that consistent. But after we see, like I said, what viewership is like and how fans are feeling after the first couple of weeks, we'll make changes to the latter weeks if needed.
Okay. So I do.
I also said that too. Like, you don't gotta stick to a time if it's not working out and getting the max amount of viewers, then don't stick to it, But I just don't see them changing it. Like, I really don't. Like, unless the viewership is so bad, like it kind of was for that kickoff event, then I would definitely do it. But I think they'll just keep these days from moving forward.
We want to get a little bit broader and talk about the way in which we got here, which was led, I think, a lot by communications that people were very frustrated by. John, you and I talked at Worlds, and I asked you, when are you planning on talking about this stuff? It had already been reported in outlets that the days were getting shifted, the time stuff had not come out yet. And you had mentioned that there were specific windows. Yes. That ended up coming out about 2 days before Riot's holiday break. Like, I feel like maybe 3 months after I'd started to hear this stuff, 2 months after it had started to get out. Why wait so long to get this pretty important information out?
Yeah, so as we talked at Worlds, we like to give Worlds a big window where people can just enjoy and focus on Worlds. And after Worlds, we want people to bask in the glory of Worlds for a few weeks before we make any big announcements. I have seen commentary on Reddit around, we deliberately did this like right before our break. That wasn't the case at all. Really, our plan was that.
So I just proved it right there. They're looking at places like Reddit. I imagine Twitter's in that too. Right. Looking at Reddit for any type of. Right, Reddit people will even mean that they ain't shit. They're looking at a community of people. I'm not saying it's not big on Reddit, but or like everyone's bad. I mean, that's just broad generalization. Like, I wouldn't never look to Reddit for any type of actual legit criticism, Like, Reddit people on there will tell you themselves, they ain't shit.
That we did want to announce this in the off-season one. We wanted to do it a significant time after Worlds. There's not a lot of time between the end of Worlds and our holiday break. But where we were really focused was this blog that we put out right after the announcement. And I think this is kind of where we fell down. We were putting all of our, hopes in the blog, kind of answering a lot of the questions and giving our fans insight into how we made that decision. And the reality is the blog just didn't land. We didn't do a good job with the blog, and I'm sorry about that. These things are kind of hit or miss sometimes, and we missed on that. So it was nothing about us going away on break. If anything, you don't want to make announcements like this when you go off on break because you want people to go and relax and know that everything's okay. But yeah, we didn't do a good job on the blog. It's that simple.
I mean, and that's that last part that you talk about is getting this out right before the break. I mean, I think a lot of people were disappointed because these types of announcements, you usually want to be able to have like a dialogue with the community. Yeah. Having it hit 2 days before the break, it was really aggravating some people. Where it felt like even if it was not your intention to put it out there and then immediately head to the holidays, a lot of people felt like there was not any opportunity for dialogue with Riot or like feedback or AMAs or additional videos or additional interviews or anything like that. How did it end up so last minute?
Yeah, I think, look, we iterate a lot on this blog, and that just took longer, and coming out of Worlds, the entire team is exhausted. So we all kind of need to take a break a little bit after Worlds, and it just didn't leave us.
You stopped moving events. I still don't understand why they keep moving cities, man. Like, having the finals in, like, a big arena makes sense. Like, if you want to, I suggest doing this. Keep Worlds in one place, and then if you want to switch it just for the finals, I think that's fine. That's what you should do. Now, I get it. There are some places out there that'll never get a chance to have a league event, but moving this amount that's ridiculous, man.
It's a lot of time to get it pulled together. So
There's a bit of a prevailing narrative that has occurred recently around, this idea that Riot doesn't care as much about the LCS these days. And I think that's what a lot of people also felt from that, right? Is that because it was such limited communication, because it felt so last minute at the end of the year, that this was a sign that this was just not a very high priority for the team. And I'm curious if you have anything to say to address those concerns or those feelings from people.
yeah, 100%. So, I think company-wide at Riot, we probably haven't done the best job recently in communicating what's
Recently? That's been like a long time.
happening with our games and the company and everything, and we are focused on that. We built a new community team this last year. We have a new social person running social for esports specifically that we just hired, just started right after the break. So you're going to see more focus and on us communicating better with the community. I tell you, if there's one thing I really want to talk a lot about, and we talked about this after Worlds, was this whole narrative around we don't care about the LCS. The LCS is dying. Riot has forgotten about the LCS. That just couldn't be further from the truth. League of Legends esport is by far the biggest esport on the planet, one of the biggest sports on the planet. The LCS is one of our more important leagues within that ecosystem. We're not going to do anything that weakens our hold, that hurts the overall sport, that hurts the LCS. It's our oldest league. Riot has invested over the years over $250 million into the LCS. We wouldn't just walk away from that investment at all. If anything, we want to get more out of that. And the LCS as a league is our number 2 league in our ecosystem from a revenue perspective. The unfortunate part is that it's number 4 and
Well, China would probably be number 1 in revenue because it's China.
Sometimes on some weekends number 5 in terms of viewership. So as a leader, I look at that gap and I go, we have some work to do to make the LCS better. So we're going to focus on the LCS this year. We are investing in the LCS 50% more this year than we did back in 2018. So we continue to make more.
Right there, he firmly admits that they actually didn't do jack shit with the LCS, because back in 2018 is when they first introduced franchising. So he directly right there admits they kind of forgot about the league. They lost interest in it. Holy shit.
Investments, because I have a philosophy around I'm going to invest into our products to make them better, to make them sustainable. And so we're going to do that. And that's why you see so many changes to the LCS right now with broadcast times, with what we want to do with the show. We've got other things that we can't talk about right now that we're investing in. But we love the LCS. If there's one thing I don't want our fans to doubt, we are so committed to the LCS. We are so passionate about the league. It hurts us when we see our fans not believing that, because that is not the intent.
Yeah, I know.
Raid Shadow Legends, great. Okay, you can go eat my pussy hole. Annabella Danger's ass.
Investing more than you did in 2018. That kind of brings me to a conversation that has occurred, and we'll talk about this later, but the Dash stuff as well as some other things have led people to think that there are budget cuts on the LCS this year. Naz, are there budget cuts? What does the budget look like for this year?
There are no budget cuts. John can vouch for it because John gives me my budget for LoL Esports. Our budget year over year is flat. So we are going to be investing just as much as we did last year, and probably 2020 in 2023. We're going to have 2 amazing road shows. We've revamped the studio and really invested in bringing that kind of modernizing, I'd say, the studio and getting really great technology in there. We're investing in publishing and promotion and content creation. And so the investment is as high as it's ever been for the LCS. And frankly, we're not going to take our foot off that pedal, even going into future years.
Yeah. Okay, so the other concern that people had around the budget cut stuff, the rumors, were just, there was a report that talked about how much FTX going away across many different sectors, but including their partnership with Riot, how much money that was and how much that affected the LCS. Are there any repercussions from a sponsor like that leaving the league?
We're just as invested, regardless of what is happening with FTX. We're not taking down our investment as a result of that. We have a fantastic business development team, and they're going to.
Oh Lord, I mean, you really can't answer that shittier, but just be like, I mean, there's a massive hole there in that budget, I'd imagine, without FTX, because they're not going to commentate on that because they realize that getting involved with a crypto pump and dump scam should not have even been something on their mind as in terms of a sponsor or a sustainable sponsor for the future.
To be out there, bringing sponsors in, and LCS this year, they're going to have 10 or more sponsors. So the league is healthy in that regard, even though FTX won't be on board anymore.
Yeah, and when I say the LCS is the number 2 revenue generating league, that's adjusting for FPX as well.
Okay, gotcha. And then you whenever you talked a little bit about the number 2, you also mentioned viewership and LCS being 4th or 5th. Yeah. Has it always been that way? Because obviously fans have felt as though there's been a viewership dip.
It hasn't. Actually, sadly, viewership has been slipping over the past 3 years. So the LCS used to be, and I'm saying 5-6 years ago, the number 3 league in our ecosystem from a viewership perspective. The LEC has done a great job building their show over the past few years. And, Brazil, our fans in Brazil and CB LOL just continues to get more and more popular. So as the LCS viewership has slipped a bit over the past few.
Yeah, CB LOL viewership is amazing over there. Like, you look at their viewership, it's really good. Like, whatever they're doing as a product is really working. LEC took a bit to get going, of some years to get going, but when they got there, they finally got their stride. They hit it out the park. LCS just needs to kind of revamp on the broadcast desk. Not Dash leaving, though. Dash not being a part of the LCS is not what people want to change in the broadcast desk. Just saying.
Years, we've just had leagues that are growing and making strides.
Going back to the communication front, I feel as though not just on the conversation at the end of the year, but also just in various ways, fans get frustrated when they feel like there's a lack of. They feel like there's a persistent lack of communication on the LCS side. So a great example of that is there was no communication really about the kickoff tournament, the global kickoff tournament, and what LCS was doing. It was a reference in that article.
Yeah, that kickoff tournament, there's a good chance the viewership was affected by that because, I mean, no one really knew about it. I mean, it's basically a ghetto all-star event without the type of level because all-stars is usually at the end of a year for a sport,
That came out at the end of last year, but also.
I'm not saying the event was bad. The event was actually very fun, but, Oh my god! Jesus Christ! No! It's an Eric July video. Oh my god.
Closing down.
No. And I like Eric, but not the right video right now. Because what the fuck was I at? I was like 18 minutes or some shit.
Teams across the board. And I think you'll be seeing some other announcements coming out.
Okay, now.
Big initiative to push for people to become aware of that. I would have expected by now to start seeing videos of, the casters all being like, oh, you could watch it during the weekdays coming home from work, like a big push to try to educate people on this new time. I know that the people that are probably watching this video and are on Reddit and, the most passionate fans are very much aware of the times and the date change because they've been talking about it so much. But I think that the average LCS fan probably doesn't even know that Doublelift is coming back to the league yet. So I think that's one of my questions is, why has there not been yet a bigger push to educate people, make people aware that this thing is happening? Because I imagine a lot of folks will just stumble across it, maybe even in week 2 or week 3, where they're like, oh, why is LCS on a Thursday?
Yeah. I mean, you'll see us in the client. That's our primary channel where we reach out to our players and we let them know what's happening. We control that by region as well. So we can do LCS specific stuff in the client. As you can imagine, there's always a lot happening in League as a game. That client space is difficult to get, and typically you get small windows there. So you will see some promotion in the client before Again, we just haven't done a great job on the communication side.
He basically admits they hired people who literally aren't shit and they got fired. Man, I could have told you that for free, and you should have did that years ago. Like, what?
We'll get better leaning into this stuff
Is there a
earlier.
Is there a plan to go beyond the client? Because obviously you're limited then to. There's a lot of people that watch the game and maybe haven't been playing the start of the season stuff yet, right?
Yeah. You know, it's super interesting. We have done tests around doing external media buys for our leagues. They don't really move the needle for us. And the reason why, I think, is, you know, esports is a little bit different than traditional sports. You kind of need to know, specifically for League, I think, even compared to Valorant, you need to know the game to really appreciate the sport. So the people that we try to activate first and foremost are active players in the game. So we just found the most effective channel for us to invest in is in the client, because that's where our players, that's where our fans are, hopefully every day.
Yeah, and you can expect to see some of those marketing, assets going out over these next 2 weeks in that lead up to, opening day. I know the team has a kind of a full-fledged publishing plan, so whether that's in the client, on our social channels, on other regions broadcasts to make, overall audiences aware of not just the LCS, but here's everything, you can catch, across the LoL esports ecosystem coming up here in the next couple weeks.
One of the major things that I think further ignited the frustrations of folks around the communication stuff was the Dash announcement at the beginning of the year. People were, I think, really surprised. Obviously, people are huge fans of his work on the broadcast.
We are too.
And, well, I mean, and that's, I think, what makes people really frustrated, right, is that it felt as though there was not any recognition from LCS. I think there was only a retweet of what he had posted, and there was a lot of questions around what this even meant. I know he referenced that he might continue to work with the LCS in some capacity. I interviewed Justin. Well, I interviewed Justin. He mentioned some of that as well, the creative director for the LCS. But why was there such a sort of silence around his departure, and why did that news come out that way?
So I guess, first and foremost, we love Dash. Dash has been amazing. We've had a long relationship with him. His performance is always stellar. So the changes we're making to the show have nothing to do with Dash's performance or our relationship with Dash. We love Dash. We started talking to him last August because we did some tests this last year around a hostless show and what that could look like for the LCS. And one of the things that we think we can improve with the LCS show is traditionally it was set up kind of like ESPN and kind of like traditional sports where you see the match, you go to Analyst Desk, you analyze the match. We don't necessarily think that's what our fans want in esports. So we want to change the format of the show. And we started talking to Dash about this last August, that we think we're going to make a stronger push into doing a hostless show, doing more entertaining segments instead of Analyst Desk, and just experiment more to see if we can find a voice that resonates better with our North American fans. So Dash, we always wanted him to be a part of that. We have other esports, we have international events where we're in active conversations with Dash to work with us on those. So for us, it wasn't a goodbye to Dash, because we're not saying goodbye to Dash. We wanted to do a joint release with him, but Dash had to go a little bit earlier, and that's fine. But we're not quite there on how we're going to fully utilize Dash, but he will be a part of the LCS show this year. So we just didn't feel it was right to say goodbye, because we don't ever want to say goodbye to Dash. He's been.
The thing here is you could tell it from the kickoff event that, I mean, I love Captain Flowers and I love Kobe, and Mark is awesome too. I got a chance to meet all those guys at the LCS. I even took pictures with Mark and Captain Flowers at one point. Like, they're awesome, but like, you could tell there was this whole, when they were talking, like when they were doing everything with each other, you could tell there was this, I don't know, it was like a void you try to fill, and they're not Dash. And that's the thing, is like, they want to have we don't need a consistent host, but you want to have the hosting duties go to other people, or just one of people on the desk, so you're not paying them as much, obviously, because running the studio takes a lot of money. So yeah, I mean, I still don't agree with it. I think you could include Dash in those things anyway.
Been great.
And that's Travis. I think to your point, and to the earlier point, we just have to get better. Where I think the silence on our end is usually very well intended, but staying silent again is causing a lot of misconception, and we've just got to get back to more communication and more transparency.
The start times and the schedule moving to Thursdays and Fridays. I know we talked a little bit about the update at the beginning, but I'd like to go back to that now. There are a lot of people who saw that announcement, and we talked about this a little bit at the Worlds stuff, but it's kind of perpetuated still. This idea that Valorant's coming in on the weekends, and now LCS, which again, whenever there's like a lack of communication, when there is a lot of talent departure, it perpetuates this idea of this is not as fancy and as exciting as Valorant. How are you balancing the needs of Valorant and the needs of LCS, especially when, for instance, LCS is now on Thursdays and Fridays? If that plan does not go well, if viewership does not look good for the weekdays, the ships have been kind of burned behind us as we've moved to those days because Valorant's going to have it on the weekends or have the weekends. So, is there any backup plan? What happens if this doesn't work out well?
Do you want to talk?
You want to take the Valorant question?
Yeah. Well, look. One, when we wanted to get more professional about how we were programming our sports, when we went to a multi esport structure for Riot with Valorant, what we saw over the past few years is there's significant crossover in the Valorant audience and the League audience, and a lot of times we were cannibalizing ourselves by not programming Valorant, correctly, by it overlapping League of Legends. Also, within League of Legends, there's a lot of shared audience between the LCS and LEC. So having 8 hours or more of esports on Saturday between the LCS and LEC just isn't a great fan experience, and it forces a choice on our fans which league they're going to watch. So one, we wanted to give each regional league kind of its own time, its own slot, its own day, compared to other regional leagues. But two, we didn't want to cannibalize ourselves across multiple esports. So when you start looking at the schedule, and we did this at the global level in working in close partnership with the regions, we just wanted to give each sport, we wanted to give each league its own window so that we didn't have to force those kind of choices on our fans. And that's where we landed on LCS being during the week, the Americas VCT League being on the weekend, and in Europe, it's the reverse. So we just had to make choices. When you're trying to carve out windows, you have to make choices. And when we did the analysis of all the viewership data and all the kind of highest available audience for each sport, we landed on Thursday and Fridays for LCS.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, as we looked at the LCS and how we can kind of bolster it, right? Especially after we talked about some of the viewership slippage these last couple of years, getting the LCS its own days and kind of getting them out from under the shadow, I'd say, a little bit of the LEC, because the LEC goes first, right, on the weekends, was really important to us. We want LCS to have ownable days. That is theirs. They will be, the prominent LOL esports broadcast on those days, and we really want to lean into that. So I'm personally excited about Thursday, Fridays, especially now that we're changing the time. We're really hopeful that the NA audience is going to be able to show up and really get to watch, I would say, one of the best esports products in the world. And just to add a couple of stats, you mentioned the overlap between the LCS and the LEC. It is a real overlap, right? So 50% or more, I'd say, of LCS fans also watch some LEC. About 35 to 45% of LEC fans also watch the LCS. So having both of those shows, as John said, on the same days means that that whole audience is either, having to choose one or just choose kind of one matchup in each, or if they really want to tune in for it, trying to watch 10 hours of content every weekend just isn't really realistic, I think, for the lifestyles of our fans. So separating those out, making sure they each have their own days, own spotlights for their audiences was really important.
LCS fans looking at the schedule, they might, if they are already thinking that Riot is deprioritizing LCS, they will look at this and say, well, of course they are, because LCS could have had Saturday and Sunday, and LEC could have had Thursday, Friday, or VCT could have taken the studio on Thursday and Friday, and LCS could have been in there. So looking at this, they see LCS being on Thursday, Friday, and say, well, of course, we got the short end of the stick.
Yeah, so I'd say a couple things. By no means is the LCS at the bottom of the totem pole for us. Like John said, LCS is one of our biggest leagues, our most important leagues. EU VCT is also moving off the weekends. This was an optimization, I'd say, exercise, right, across the whole calendar. And most of our leagues compromised, right? Everyone kind of had to compromise so that we could get every league in a good position. So
Okay, so I'm gonna go over several things mentioned, which are, I know LEC fans are not gonna be interested in hearing this, but good amount of LEC fans do watch LCS because they managed to give feedback on the LCS too, and why they don't like it. The other thing to bring up is, I do agree in some sense where you have to make sure they're separate, because if you want LCS to have its own thing, then it needs to be in its own type of setting, And I think they were ultimately piggybacking off the LEC viewership to boost up the LCS, when in reality, if you boost up the LCS and it's sustainable in viewership on its own, then you have that as its own thing, and then the LEC would just watch it if they're just that interested,
See, as an example, last season was on Fridays and Saturdays, and then if they had a super week, they go into Sundays. They are now going to be Saturday, Sunday, Monday, right? So that's an adjustment for the LEC. We talked about VCT coming off. LCK is adjusting some of their broadcast times to kind of capture a wider audience. And so this was no way intended for the LCS to have a lesser time slot. And in fact, when we looked at the numbers and the data and the viewing patterns, we actually saw that the audience that's available for the LCS on the weekends versus Thursday, Friday is actually pretty equivalent. It's actually a little bit higher on Thursdays and Fridays. And so, we're going to see how this works. We're committed to really monitoring this season and adjusting. This is going to be new for all of us. So we're going to learn and we're going to adjust as we go if we need to.
And our Asian leagues, they have been broadcasting during the week for many years at this point, to great success, by the way. They don't see a big drop-off on weekends versus weekdays. So, again, to what Nas said, we see a lot of opportunity during the week that we haven't tapped into, and a lot of opportunity in giving each league, each sport, its own window.
So when the announcement first came out at the end of last year, there was kind of an argument made of, hey, we think this can really increase viewership if we put it at 12 o'clock rather than 2. Obviously, I have been a public proponent of putting this at 2, but I do wonder, now that you've shifted it, are you making the conscious decision to have a viewership hit or less viewership available to assist the North American viewers?
Yeah. Sorry. Do you want to go? Go ahead, Nas, and then I'll go.
No, okay. There might be. That's the real answer, right? And I think we're okay with that, as long as we make sure that the top priority is our North American community. The 12 o'clock time zone, or time start, I should say, was optimized for the biggest English-speaking audience that's out there. Like we said, we do know that there is a big audience outside of the US for the LCS, and we think that's a good thing, right? Growing global fandom for our leagues, for these teams, for these pros, is a great thing for the sport, but it can't come at the cost of losing our domestic audience. And so that's why we're going to do the shift. But in addition to that shift, we do want to look at ways to bring more fans in, even starting at these new times. So you can expect to see us launch as an example, like a Spanish language feed later this season. We're looking at other interesting things like getting co-streamers in other regions to, bring LCS content there. So we're going to try a number of things this year to really kind of get the LCS back to those peak viewership years that they saw in 2016 through 2019. And at that time, about 45% of that viewership was coming from outside of NA. And so we just see this as like a huge opportunity area.
By the way, I don't know if you saw it, but we built a co-streamer pod in the arena. So
Okay.
we're going to lean even further into co-streamers. That may be a way that we reach other languages as well. But this is
I doubt they're going to be using that. Co-streamers are usually at their houses. I think that was a pretty bad investment there. I don't know. We'll see how they use it.
one of the differences in esports and traditional sports that really took a while for me personally to kind of get my head around. I'm a huge traditional sports fan. Traditional sports are hyper local. Like you're an LA Rams fan because you live in LA generally, I think. I'm a Boston Celtics fan. I don't live in Boston, but I watch the Boston broadcast, and it's at East Coast times, which aren't great for me, but I still watch every Boston game. With esports, fandom is much more international because of the nature of online games and, and our audience being online and on streaming platforms. And so the fandom is spread out more. It's more of an international focus, I think, for each of our regional leagues that we want to strengthen going forward. So we do think about the audience for the LCS that's outside of North America because that's a key part of our player base. That's a key part of the fandom for the product itself. So it is a consideration, but primarily we want to focus on serving the NA audience first.
Are there any plans to increase transparency around North American viewership as opposed to the rest of viewership? Because there's a lot of doom and gloom that occurs whenever fans who can't really do much beyond like look at the number underneath the Twitch stream or the YouTube stream. Every now and then esports charts puts out like a report or whatever, and that sometimes creates like a Reddit thread. And when they see viewership slip, I think people tend to feel like LCS is dying, right? That narrative starts to spin up. But then, if you are personally, it sounds as though it would be good for you, even if viewership decreased a slight amount or even stayed the same at this new time, if there was a higher percentage of those folks that are North American. If this is for the North American League, the North American viewership is up. So I don't know if that's something you would ever be comfortable talking about more, because obviously, as opposed to traditional sports, there's just very little data that's ever public or transparent around this stuff.
Our audience does a pretty good job, actually, of tracking our viewership. I'm always surprised that I see numbers out there before I even get the numbers, and we have partners who help us with that. Here's what I'll commit to you, Travis. At a minimum, let's get together mid-split. We're going to be monitoring how things are going with the LCS across all these different changes that we're making with the show itself, with these new times. Let's do like a mid-split update, and we can share some of the learnings that we've seen over the first half of the split. We can talk about things like that if you like. But again, in a effort to be more transparent, be more.
The thing here about when he talked earlier, mentioning the CB LOL and their boost in viewership, it's also a boost because the actual broadcast product is better. I'd imagine that's the reason why a lot of the fans like it, and the CB LOL has managed to capture all their fans in a way that makes them interested in the league. I think, as they've mentioned, and I disagree on some things, they've kind of been really lacking on like communicating with the NA audience and just having this silent nature go on. And I always say, being silent really doesn't help you in the long term, because it just means that, if you're not responding, you're basically just buying into those narratives,
More communicative. I will totally commit to that because it's going to be a big focus of ours. We will not let the LCS die, and it is a huge focus for us. That's why you're seeing so many changes. I really want to land that message. The reason why there's so many changes is because we love the LCS. We want it to be more successful. It's a great product.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk more mid-split. I think it is a good time to do a bit of an update or deep dive. But also, I'm curious, how long are you committed to this 2 o'clock start time, Thursdays and Fridays. I mean, for instance, if viewership looks really rough those first couple of weeks, is there a world where like week 3 you break the glass and make some sort of shift on the schedule, or how long can you commit to this?
I think we need to give our fans some time to get used to the new time. We're going to be trying different things with the show as well during the split. So in my head, I kind of want to give it a full split and see what happens. And that way, I think we've had enough time for fans to adjust. We've had enough time for us to adjust. We've had time to do the analysis. So in my head, we're going to try this first split. We'll make adjustments for summer if we need to.
I think we've talked about as much on all the LCS stuff as I had notes on. Obviously, shifting to 2, I think, addressed a lot of the frustrations that I had in our last interview. But I am curious about the format changes that you've made on the global front, because obviously those have been amidst the frustration around the LCS. There's been a lot of positive reception around the global format changes. So
for the first time, we want to talk about formats.
Yes,
and I'm going to let Naz do that.
Yeah,
she did all the work with her team. So
Naz, I mean, what went into these changes? Because obviously people have been very critical of both MSI and Worlds for a while.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of questions, including from yourself, over the last couple years, around global event formats. And so we started, looking at that really seriously as early as 2021. And that exercise continued through the 2022 season. We wanted to take a very deliberate, analytical approach to it. We didn't want to just quickly make a change for the sake of change, but we wanted to address the challenges that we had also identified on our side with the formats, as well as, hear the fan feedback and really understand what fans were looking for across the world. And that feedback's different depending on what region you're looking at. And so it was a very collaborative effort here internally. It was our team here on global, but working with every one of our regions around the world to really beat up multiple versions of different formats. We looked at everything. And so I'm personally really happy with where we landed, with MSI being a full double elim. I cannot wait for Worlds, because I think having a Swiss format.
I think Worlds is gonna be the more prolific event. It's the biggest thing they put out as a product during the year. But I think MSI will be the overall better tournament with double elimination. And I'm still going to be an advocate of double elimination at Worlds. And they're so close to changing it. They want to put double elimination at Worlds. They'll use MSI and test it out this year. And then when it does very well, like I think it will, they will switch it up to Worlds being double elimination in 2024, hopefully.
Instead of groups is going to be really, really exciting. Just that dynamic seeding, and it's just going to be so much more competitive, right? Having teams of the same record be able to be consistently matched up. So yeah, we're thrilled.
It's also very bad. I don't mind the change to the system a little bit when it comes to that, but the problem here is like a team like, I don't know, fucking T1 could be matched up against like a Brazilian team. It's like they're not treating any team as equal or above. That's just kind of weird. I don't know.
Thrilled with where it is. Again, we're going to learn from it. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of learnings coming out of it, and we'll continue to adjust as we go. But it's going to be a very hype year for international events.
I am super excited. And Swiss is going to push us on communication. That is the one drawback to Swiss, is we are really going to have to be clear about who's playing who and when.
But no more dead games during groups.
I can't. Oh, so good.
It's going to be great.
So a lot of people...
Even they admit themselves the system earlier was flawed. They even admit themselves the system earlier was flawed, because you'd have... Literally, last year for Worlds, it was a week 2, specifically, when NA beat EU in their opening games, and then all the NA teams would lose to the Chinese team. All the games after that were worthless. Now, a lot of people say that, well, was that just only in 2022? No, there's been a constant thing for many years. I just don't know why it took this long to change it,
People will be looking at MSI and they'll say, hey, this is a really exciting event. World's very exciting event. and they will wonder if they can purchase tickets to this in a reasonable way.
That's right.
So are these going to be available more than about 3 or 4 weeks before the start of the event?
Absolutely. You can expect MSI tickets, information about venue and schedule to come out in mid to late February. And then same thing for Worlds. We're going to give a really long runway so that fans can really make their plans. And we can't wait to see them in our venues.
Do you have a window? I know you were able to give a window for MSI. Any kind of window for Worlds?
Nothing that I can share yet, but like I said, we want to give many months of time for fans to be able to buy tickets and make their arrangements. So more to come on Worlds. I know we haven't announced the cities or the venues yet. Expect that coming pretty soon.
Very good.
We're close.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I hope many folks like me are relieved to hear about the difference between 12 and 2. I think will make a lot of people happy, especially the East Coast fans. But anything that you want to say to any of the fans out there, especially those still a little distressed and worried about the state of LCS?
Yeah, no, listen, I love all the feedback that we see. I read Reddit, so it's the best way to reach us. So thank you for that.
Reddit is the best way to reach them. That's fucking crazy. All right, okay, we're done with that. 210 comments. Okay. Travis saving the LCS is, oh my goodness. Let's see. Great interview. Thanks for doing this. Let's see. I don't play League regularly. Ruined ARAM. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Let's do... Okay. No, yeah, the interview, Travis, I think, did a pretty good job on grilling them on problems the community actually had. And I think that was really good to see overall. Yeah, this is a pretty solid video overall. So now that this video is over, now we're done. So you got to see the initial pre-context video, my initial response to Travis's first video regarding Riot's communication, and then you have Riot's communication surrounding all this. Just, the only issue I have is utilizing Reddit as a big metric for a lot of that. I mean, it's the best way of knowing certain criticisms around the league and stuff, but I wouldn't be a full big advocate of just that overall, because social media, Reddit is considered social media. There's a lot of people who boast a big game on social media, but in reality, they're not worth shit. So that's my thing with Reddit. The MSI changes are fine. The world changes are not the best, but it's better than what we had. So it's a win-win no matter what. The LCS changes to the times is also good. I like that. Because I think the 2 p.m. start time is better, even for myself, The other thing that I'll say is I think people, if you really like what the LCS is producing, you are going to watch, If you really enjoy what the LCS is providing, you will watch it because you are genuinely interested in the league. Not some fake genuine interest where people pretend like they like it. No, you'll actually watch because you actually think the league is good. And I think the viewership will reflect that. It might even be the same. Who knows? But yeah, what do you guys think about this video? I'll see you guys later. Cloud9 Podcast, 2 episodes weekly, starting this week, actually, or whenever you see this video. So yeah, 2 episodes of the Cloud9 Podcast starting this year. Obviously, we're going to be doing that very, very soon, and you guys will obviously notice that. Then you guys will also get competitive predictions. Yeah, it's going to be a big year for this channel as well. More pre-recorded content, not too much of it. There is going to be competitive predictions, which is going to be your pre-recorded content you'll get throughout the week a bit earlier, ahead of the Cloud9 Podcast in some cases. I'm still trying to figure out the days for competitive predictions. Mostly going into the week, we'll probably have those on potentially Wednesday and Tuesday actually, for competitive predictions, but we'll have to see how that really goes. I'm also working myself on how to get things better with that. Mostly for competitive predictions, I'll most likely be doing it with Warren for the LEC, since the LEC starts on Friday, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They have a 3-day broadcast week. So competitive predictions for the LEC will be on Thursday or Wednesday, or no, it would have to be Tuesday. Mostly it will be between like Wednesday, because the LCS is Thursday too. So most competitive prediction videos will be done between Tuesday and Wednesday to have them ready for Thursday, Friday. And since the LCS is beginning earlier, the LCS video should be out first, actually. So that's probably what I'm going to do. LCS competitive predictions on Tuesday. LECs will be out on Wednesday. So, yeah. I will see you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. I am MSK, and this is Esports Content Entertainment. Your one place for esports content. Alright, guys. See you guys later. Deuces.